Okay. Private lesson with Deb. And which horse are you on? Finer Things?
Finer Things.
Okay. So I will pull up the video, which you said you can't see very well, but it is showing up on my screen. So we're just going to roll with that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you were
you're a
there.
little delayed and fuzzy too.
I'm delayed and fuzzy.
So,
I wonder if I'm having internet connection issues.
yeah.
Let's give it a try.
Okay.
Okay, so we're recording. Let me share the screen. And can you see your video?
There it is.
Okay. So any questions? It looks like it's an 11-minute video, so I'm just going to start letting it play through so I can see it. I know it's fuzzy on your end.
Yeah, for some reason.
But tell me about this ride. Tell me where Finer Things is, what you're working on, what questions you have.
So I kind of applied the same thing where we did the video with Callie of using the turn and trying to increase the amount of push and adduction in the turn instead of it being that what did we talk about, that she's not braking, she's just really slowing down kind of thing.
Right. So
She's not being active, she's being passive.
right. So braking is an active resistance to pushing. And what that balance gives us between braking and pushing is more stability. So when we give a leg aid, it's not necessarily increasing speed, it's increasing pushing force. And if we have good pushing force coming into straight on a turn, then a little light use of our back and maybe a little bit of rain resistance activates the braking force. The turn is kind of dynamic, plus our aids, to help the hind legs stay deeper under the center of the body where they can brake easier. And using our aids to increase braking force so that we're looking for that constant balance between braking and pushing. And when we get there, it doesn't mean the speed is going to be fast or slow. We have no idea what the actual speed is going to be. It's more of a sense of stability where they're not pulling us forward. We're not shaking in the saddle. We have a straight line of force through the midline. And the increase of stability under the saddle is the most important indicator that we're increasing the flexion of the spine.
Okay.
Does that make
sense?
She
feels more stable. Yeah, she feels more stable to me.
Yeah.
And I'm using a figure 8.
And you see how this looks different than what we looked at with Callie. Like, even though she's slow, she has some energy in her forward motion that's indicating the pushing force, the pushing power.
Yeah.
So she has a little bit of a good tempo where she's not looking lethargic, even though she's slow. Like just there where you kind of let her go.
I've got a leg on her just to get that walk.
Yes.
I'm active.
Yeah, and what happens as we get closer and closer to basic balance, which is controlling the rotation, reducing lateral bending, balancing the braking and pushing, when all that comes together, the turning from the lightest rotation of our pelvis becomes easy. We're mostly using the reins to keep the neck straight in front of our seat bones during the turn. Responding to our leg aid results in more energy. Responding to the tone of our back results in, how do I want to say, the feeling of not falling forward, or the feeling of what feels like a weight shift to the hind legs. So they feel more in control of their own movement, which all of that creates more and more stability in the back under the saddle. So we get less impact on our body. That's really the way you
I don't
tell.
feel she's, I don't feel she's sloshing me around as much as she used to.
Yes, that's exactly it. So if you think of your middle, like that sort of tennis ball in your middle being quiet, or your pelvis full of water, not sloshing, when the horse is in a mild version of isometric holding or extension, they can look like they're in the same posture, but it's very hard for us to keep our skeleton quiet and stable, to keep our middle from rolling around. She actually looks like it's getting easier for you to remain quiet. And you're not, I don't see any obvious pulling on the reins to make your turns. She's mostly following your seat. You may be giving her a boatload of leg on these tighter kind of turns on a figure 8.
Yes, I am. I'm pretty active with that.
Yeah, and that little trot transition was quite good. Like that should be the natural result of increasing pushing force. So whenever she starts to drop the pole or fall forward or get heavy on your hands or get behind the bit, that's a sure indicator that she lost control over her body weight, or she lost the engagement of her hindquarter and the braking. And so that would be the moment where you can tighten the turn and or increase the leg aid, or do both.
I've been doing both.
Okay. And for her, that
Whenever
makes sense.
For her, it's helping. The only other thing, and I noticed it today, I'm still feeling like I really have to resist being pulled down in the well.
In what part? I understand that the drop of the back creates a hole. Do you feel that more towards the front of the saddle or the back of the saddle?
Yeah. No, the front.
The front.
She's pulling me down into the front. It's a lot of resistance and tone for me to stay upright.
Yeah, and that's where we feel a little bit more work in the muscles that keep our lumbar straight, our abdominal muscles, and our hip rotators and gluteals, because you're really resisting letting your seat bones and pelvis drop forward into that hole. And that's actually normal for a horse that's been, functioning in extension and a little disengaged with the pelvis. As you're building up more hindquarter stability, you'll feel like you sit on the edge of a ledge. And so you'll feel like you have more horse to sit on towards the back of the saddle. And that there's kind of an empty space at the front of the saddle. So what that tells you is you want to kind of stay on that feeling of the ledge and keep working to increase the pushing and the braking and the stability of her hindquarter engagement. Like just keep the neck straight and don't worry too much about the feeling of lifting the back just yet. What will happen is as she gets more control over her body weight and is able to increase push, maybe to the trot, without losing that engagement, without losing that control over her body weight, then you'll feel what feels like a ledge maybe towards the back of the saddle. She'll start to fill up. That ledge will move forward as her upper back releases some of that tension and the muscles become softer. She'll actually start to widen and fill up the front of the saddle. Yeah. So as long as you feel that, then yes, you're working very hard to stay out of the hole. And you want to err on the side, not really putting more weight in your seat than your legs, but keeping your body weight equal between your seat and your thigh bones, or your seat and your legs. Because if she pulls you into
expand on that?
Yeah, if you fall into the hole, your seat will lighten and you'll end up pushing in the stirrups. You may end up tensing your upper body, but you have pretty good control over that.
Yeah, I think what for me is checking in with my knees constantly, that those aren't locking, and that prevents me
And
from
that's
falling
what
into
I
the
mean.
well.
If we're checking our internal body weight from head to toe, ideally, we have slightly more weight in our seat and legs compared to our upper body,
Okay,
right?
that makes sense.
When they have a hole, if they're if the back of the saddle is sloping down because they're dropping the lower back, then we want definitely more weight in our legs to stay out of the hole. So we want to be a little bit towards a 2-point position. If they're dropping more at the front of the saddle, then we want our body weight more equal between our seat and our thigh bones. If it becomes too excessive in the seat, you'll start closing your knees in rather than having your contact with the upper thigh. And if you
I keep thinking, knees forward and away, because I can feel myself locking them. And I was like, no, it's not that. Don't do that.
Yeah. So the trick is to use the muscles you need to really focus on straightening your lumbar as much as possible and lifting the front of the pelvis without putting so much weight in your seat that your knees pinch in.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you actually sit, it may feel to you like you're sitting backwards because of her back. So it can make you feel like you're leaning back. So the only way to,
I feel,
and sometimes when people really have to lift the pelvis and straighten the lumbar, women do actually overload the seat and will put the legs in front of the torso. So the way you check is you sort of go to maximum straightening of your lumbar, maximum lifting of your pelvis. And if you're still balanced, your upper inner thigh will be in more contact than your lower thigh and knee. And you will feel kind of an equal amount of weight between your seat and your thigh bones.
Yeah, that's what I'm working towards. It's very difficult.
Yeah, because and the thing you can play with is a little bit of flexion through the hip joint. So sort of straightening the lumbar as much as you can, even letting the weight fall into your seat to know what that feels like and how it affects your legs. And then in order to get weight from your seat to your legs, it's a tiny bit of taking the shoulders forward without losing the straightness of the lumbar. So just gently flexing the hip joint. But this is the best I've seen finer things going. Like you're really feeling that amount of leg you need to keep the pushing force going. And it doesn't look like you're having to use your back too much, like you're not getting stiff from the use of your back.
No.
And you're utilizing a figure 8. So the constant turning is helping with the braking. So that means you're going to have to give more leg because the figure 8's doing half of the work of your back for you.
Yes.
Right. And if the leg doesn't keep her becoming more stable, then make your figure 8 bigger.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
She actually chooses this size.
Yeah, it probably helps her.
This is her choice of when she wants to turn. She does all the turning. I just find the straightness in between.
Okay, good. Good.
She likes, and then see, now she's going further. That's her choice.
And even if she's falling on the turn, which could be why she's choosing the turn, you're recovering the balance by keeping her straight while she turns, which is what allows her to get her hind legs up under her in order to control her body weight. And it's the most consistent correct rein contact I've ever seen with you on this horse. And so that tells you on this horse, who always over curled her neck and dropped her pole, that you are getting the back muscles and hindquarter working correctly.
Yay.
Yay. So there's only one place in here where she did a little trot transition and it falls apart. She gets a little unstable and gets lethargic. So what I would work on is she has better control. She's straight enough that she keeps her neck long. So you've got the length from the axial stability. And now it's really going to be a focus on increasing the pushing force more and more and more, balancing that with your braking aids and the use of straight on a turn until the most natural evolution is the trot transition. So I'm not sure if she offered the trot in this video or if you asked for it.
No, I asked for it.
Okay, then I wouldn't ask for it because that's sort of what I suspected, but it could have been her. She may offer it and still fall apart. But if you focus on increasing the pushing force, like you're going to take several sessions to make your trot transition. Every session, you're going to work on a quicker tempo or a little bit faster speed, gently moving, increasing the pushing force towards trot, but not allowing her to go back into extension or over curl the neck. So you'll have little stop signs on the way where you have to back off your current level of pushing or her current speed and let her stabilize there for a little bit of time. Not a long time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah. The only way I can get a healthy trot transition is on a turn.
And that will be true. No, that will be true for a long time because she's still overcoming all of the disengagement of her hindquarter from being an extension through her back. And so the turn, as you increase pushing force, the closer she gets to trot, you might actually make the turn tighter to keep the increased pushing force balanced with an increased braking force.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So you're kind of building up the pushing force to get to trot while you're keeping the braking force controlling the body weight during every speed increase. That's, you know, the juggle, right? So if you actually ask for the trot transition, let me go back just a little, there it was. It's that leap in pushing force was more than she could manage in the balance that she had. So her neck goes up a little, her back goes down a little, and you see the hindquarters wobble side to side.
Yeah,
so
right there.
I would put trot in your mind. That is the next logical step for her balance and the only way you're going to build the muscles that support the balance you have. So the balance you have is basic balance. It is very good balance. And you feel that, right?
I do on her. I do.
Yeah. And so now what you want to do is say, we need the same coordination at trot. And so the way you're going to build it is, well, it's how gaited horses have to do it because they're just changing speed and tempo, but they're never leaving a walk in order to gait. So with her, she is going to change footfall pattern. She's going to go from a 4-beat walk to a 2-beat trot. But the trick is to increase the power and control, self-control, and increase power in a 4-beat walk until she shifts into 2 beats.
Okay.
And you don't need to ask her to shift into 2 beats. At a certain amount of work in her back muscles or power or speed or tempo, that will be the next logical step for her, is just to change gaits. Right? With a gaited horse, you're always in a walk. So it's just a walk at the speed.
I never thought of it that way.
Right? But with a non-gaited horse, at a certain threshold of speed or muscle activity or pushing, they're not going to stay in 4 beats. They're going to change to 2 beats. And so that's how you can work towards a trot transition while you maintain the balance of pushing with the control or self-control over her body weight. See if I forget where it was.
It's always on a right-hand turn. She does better on a right-hand turn than a left going into trot.
Yeah, so keep refining the center line to be a more stable, straighter, like geometrically straight and stable, unwavering central line of force. right? And then every time, like especially because you feel that hole at the front of the saddle, which can be subtle for a lot of riders, you might also sense when that line of force is sort of traveling parallel over the ground and when it's traveling towards the ground.
Oh, now the video's clear. Well,
Oh,
it's better.
okay. So I'm just going back over the trot
That trot,
transition
right?
because you'll see when you put on enough leg to get the trot, she loses that coordination of
She
her
becomes,
basic balance and she just goes back to extension,
you're right.
which is
Exactly.
her, it's just her letting you know, I don't have the power yet to go to trot on demand without losing this coordination
Yeah.
that we're working on. And
And
so
what she
any,
does, it's so obvious. She moves her whole belly up and down and she stiffens her legs.
yes, yes, that's what
It's just
extension
awful to
does.
ride. It's
Yeah.
awful. It's awful.
Yeah, and that's just the feeling of longitudinal extension, and it's systemic through the whole body.
It's
And the
awful.
instability is the side effect of the spine pushing down. So the way you want to work with her, which also isn't a bad idea, Callie may want to make transitions sooner. She's a more stable horse, and
Yes,
to the
she
point,
loves to do trot. She loves to go from walk to trot all the time.
right? And that's because the trot work for a horse can be, it can ease the muscle work of the back and it can bring some suppleness to the muscles. Her Callie's issue is being resistant and too stiff,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
This horse is the opposite.
Yep.
She's like, what can I do for you? And wiggles all over the place,
Yes.
right? So a horse that tends to be stiff or defensive will have an easier time making transitions.
Hmm.
It's the wiggly ones that have to keep resorting into extension to get more power, which only perpetuates the instability.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you have one that's a little bit unstable through the midline, you want to build them up slowly into the trot transition, really building the control over their movement at the same rate that you're building more capacity for speed and power.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's looking really good. And kudos to you on the rein contact. That is huge.
that is
Like
huge.
that was the biggest frustration with this mare was there was as good as you are at coordinating and using your own body, there was no way to keep up with this mare with a consistent rein contact.
No, it's just now coming. It's just now getting consistently nice.
Yeah, and when the head and when her head and neck becomes long and stable and level enough to have a light normal rein contact, that is a direct reflection of her gaining the balance and control she needs through her hindquarter and rudimentary use of the back muscles. So then from there, it's a matter of strengthening the engagement and keep building the back muscles,
Okay.
balancing between the braking and pushing use of the back muscles.
Okay.
But this is lovely. And she may soon even get to a place where you can use rein resistance as part of the braking and you'll get lift instead of drop. But that's a little tricky on horses like her. So
Yeah, I'd rather take my time, and I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I like how it feels too, because I'm not, you can see I'm not being jousted around in the saddle at all
exactly.
compared to what she used to do. She was all over the map.
Exactly. And even on the turns, you're not having to adjust a significant amount of weight left to right. You're not struggling where she's really putting you, in inverted rotation, throwing you to the outside. She's not doing that anymore. So you've got really good control over the rotation and the straight alignment of her spine. And so now it's a matter of playing with different degrees or tightness of the turn with the neck straight, coupled with how much do I increase the force with my legs or use a whip versus resisting with my back or using any rein resistance.
Right. And this is, I think I forgot to share, this is like 20 minutes after warm up. So this was getting into the work. The warm up is real messy, and But then I had Joe come out and do a little recording of, oh, she's in a good place. Let's record that.
Oh, good. Good. And as soon as you sort of just let go, at least she lengthens her neck.
Yes.
Like, yes, she falls into long and low. They all do. But instead of over curling the neck and falling forward, she's really finding more length through her neck, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it actually looks proportionate, her neck and her body.
Yes.
Much more proportional than it ever has.
Yes.
So
No,
cool.
really good job, Deb. Really good. And so I would say continue, but
Okay.
put trot on the menu. Like seriously work your way towards trot without thinking in terms of a trot transition.
I have to trot. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just thinking, how could we keep building the speed, building the tempo, building the pushing power without losing the control, her self-control over her body weight or change her neck use. So any change in the rein contact is kind of indicating that you're losing that balance. So
Right.
it's nice when you have a rein contact like you do, which is really the result of getting the engagement in the hindquarters. Now you can really refine your braking and pushing aids and the choices you make regarding your path of travel to not only retain the coordination of basic balance, but keep building more power and more strength within it.
Yeah, I'm real happy with the way that looks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for all your help.
Very good. No, you're doing an amazing job. That looks great. If Callie looks like that too.
She feels completely different. As you said, they're two completely different creatures.
So what you can do, because the last time we looked at Callie, she wasn't doing quite as well as what I just saw in this video with finer things. So even though every horse arrives there differently, all horses feel the same in basic balance. During the precise coordination that we're calling basic balance with the spinal functions, the forces of motion feel the same. The absence of the horse jostling us around, the ease of steering, the ease of turning or speed adjustments, braking or pushing, all of that, when they're really using that coordination of basic balance, then we feel the same stillness in the saddle. So what you're feeling on finer things, when you get back on Callie, you can sort of compare.
I did that today. So that's great that you brought that up. So I rode finer things first, and then I got on Callie and I asked myself, is this a lift or is this stiffness that I feel?
And how would you know the difference?
Well, okay, so if I compare, say, the first 15 to 20 minutes of Callie's ride, I would say it was stiff because it was very jostling. It was very unorganized, and there was no calmness in the water, shall we say.
So the difference is if you get on finer things and she has muscular tension from not having the right coordination, you're going to get pushed and wiggled all over the place.
Yes.
The same muscular tension and lack of coordination in Callie is going to jar you all over the place.
That's what she was doing. I just felt like it was, this little jutting everywhere, even at the walk. And then about 20, 30 minutes into the ride, the water became much more smooth, organized. I don't know how else to explain it.
No, you're explaining it exactly right. When we're talking in terms of forces of motion, basically balance is an equalization of opposing forces to the degree that you have a zero sum.
Okay, that really makes sense to me to look for that. Yeah.
So the zero sum is what we experience in the saddle.
Yeah.
That's why they're easy to ride. right? So we have left, right forces, we have twisting forces, we have bending forces, we have braking and pushing forces. So basic balance, when all of those forces are equalized, we reduce the twisting, we reduce the lateral bending, we balance the braking and pushing to get a minimal amount of flexion through the spine. That's what creates a zero sum of forces acting against our body in the saddle. So it feels easy. It's not hard to be stable, and it's not hard to maintain our balance. So where some horses feel wiggly and they kind of shake our bones all over, that's their expression of muscle tightness. But if with Callie, where you said, is it a lifted back or is it muscular tension? That's a really good question, because a tight back we could assume is a lifted back. But the difference is a lifted back does not jar the rider, does not wiggle the rider.
At the beginning of Callie's ride today, I could not control her with my body. It was all rein contact. It was like she was all over the map.
Yeah, then that's a sure sign that what you're feeling is tension and not lift.
Yeah.
Because when we actually feel lift, first of all, we experience the zero sum of equalized forces in the saddle. And it's where the term throughness comes from. I feel the throughness as the push from the hindquarter goes through the saddle. I can feel the energy almost like a little wave through the back muscles, maybe one side and then the other. But it's not a wave or an amount of energy that generates forces that would destabilize my body. It's literally just the feeling of a flowing force, which is why we describe it like water, because it's not acting against the body. Throughness is the energy going through the spine being controlled by the horse's muscles. So self-controlled, self-regulated.
Right.
So throughness is an energy and a sensation, but it's not something that alters or influences the stability of our body. That's how we know the difference.
Yeah.
So then we have not only the correct skeletal coordination and use of the spine, but we have correct muscle use.
Okay.
Right. So if they're atrophied, they're wiggly. If they're tight, they're wiggly. If they're tight, they can be stiff. Right. Either way, we bounce. They're hard to ride.
Bounce is a good way to put it.
We either get catapulted or we get jiggled.
Yeah.
One of the two.
That's things catapults and Callie jiggles.
Yeah.
I have both.
Yeah, but this is getting really good. And it's the most engagement I've seen. She still has a ways to go. Like she needs more work. The turns are helping increase the adduction, which is helping rotate the pelvis, getting a little deeper placement of the hind legs.
Yeah, I'm seeing that, especially right there. That's the best I've seen.
And she's getting more comfortable with that. So the less kind of she's dropping the pole, falling forward, over curling the neck, the more she's starting to get the hang of controlling her body weight, that she has just enough engagement to start to control her body weight. And what you want is more of that. You have it.
More. Okay.
You just want more of it. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying put trot in your mind, and she can initiate the turn or you can initiate the turn.
Yeah, she's usually very good. I'm just trying to maintain speed and coordination. She usually picks the turns, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, and you can also play with how does it affect her if you said, no, don't turn, go straight.
Okay.
How does it affect her if she starts a turn and you make it tighter, or if you make it wider? Those may be where it's good with an unstable horse. It's always useful to just allow them to pick the direction while you focus on the midline getting stable. That's a good way to start. But to take the balance higher, you might want to challenge her a little bit and say, okay, you initiated the left turn at 30 degrees. I'm going to tighten it up. right?
The only times recently that I've asked, she goes back into extension.
Don't worry about that,
Okay.
because like to try to keep it perfect means it'll never be perfect.
Right.
As you challenge it, you're going to get moments, and that speaks of the challenge,
Okay.
where she either falls forward a little bit or she reverts back to extension a little bit. And every time you're changing the angle of that pelvis, which is altering the placement of the hind legs, and you move towards more engagement or you move towards more flexion through the back, they're going to be unstable at first. So you're going to get a fall forward, or you're going to get a little bit of extension. The thing you want to watch for is that she doesn't get stuck there.
Right.
As long as it's coming and going and coming and going, all that tells you is you're at the next threshold of challenge.
Okay.
It's not bad. Don't try to avoid it.
Okay. I'll just keep asking and see what I get.
Yeah. And I think you're at a point where by not directing her too much, you have the essential coordination that we're looking for, and you know you have it.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
So we just add a little bit more and see what happens.
Right. And so as you play with a tighter turn, a straighter line, more pushing, more braking, all of those things, she will go through little wobbles in her balance with every improvement she makes. But what you should feel is she comes through the wobble with more stability under the saddle, with a more feeling of power and control, maybe even more speed, getting you closer to trot.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, that's excellent, Deb.
Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. Well done.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think at this point, you want to maintain the feeling that you have as much as possible during the ride, but it's never static. Life doesn't stand still.
Right.
So if you try to stay there, it will fall apart.
Okay.
And that's another way to approach it, is just keep her in balance. And pretty soon what you're doing will quit working, and she will fall forward, or she'll go back to extension at some point. That's what happens when we try to keep it perfect. And then people are like, what do I do? So that's going to happen even if you keep riding her like this and she builds up more strength. So what I'm saying is you could start introducing little challenges that you haven't been able to do before, and it's going to happen there too. She's going to be challenged. She's going to have to explore, but you come out the other side with an improved version of the same basic balance.
Okay, cool. I'm ready for the challenge.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. And you're finally out of the bend the neck, make a tight turn, or make a million tight turns, or make the turn smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Like, this is just a reasonable, good, balanced walk on a reasonable pattern, kind of a big, easy figure eight. This is lovely.
Good.
Well done. Any other questions?
No, it all makes sense. We'll see, you know, for a month from now, I'll get a video and apply some of the new stuff and see where we go.
Okay. Sounds good. But yeah, beautiful job. Well done. Good for you. And I hope Callie gets as good as that in her own way, of course.
In her own way.
Yeah.
Totally different paths between.
No, and you may be trotting Callie a lot more in the process of trying to get to the same coordination that you have with finer things at the walk, but you don't have with finer things at the trot.
Yeah, it's
and that's why I say some horses discover their balance better during trot, and walk is the harder part. Where other horses, the walk is the easier part and the trot is the challenge. It just depends.
Yeah, it just reminds me not to get stuck in the ABCs of it all. Like, you know, each horse is going to figure it out in their own way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all we can do is pay attention to whether that feeling of zero-sum forces under the saddle is moving that direction or the forces acting against our stability are
Mhm.
increasing.
Yeah, I
Right.
get the
And if,
wiggle back. Yeah.
right. And
Or the extension or the neck curl or whatever.
right. So the more wiggled or catapulted we get around we feel in the saddle, that can be a temporary part of making an improvement. Or if it's consistent and starts to become more consistent, it tells us we need to switch our strategy.
Okay.
This isn't working.
Okay. That makes total sense. Yeah. I'm in tune with them enough. I'll know.
Oh yeah, you'll know. Yep. And the more they get accustomed to the coordination of balance, the more they hate losing it. They notice as much as we notice that it's no longer a good feeling. It's not the normal
I think
thing
finer
anymore.
things is there. I don't know about Callie. I think Callie needs a lot more trot work. That's where she's going to find it.
Yeah. And Callie hasn't fully arrived at the same level of coordination that finer things has.
Right.
And so that's why when they're still searching, change things up a lot. Keep
Okay.
experimenting with what decreases the forces I feel and what increases the forces I feel. And that's your guide.
Okay. That makes total sense after my rides today.
Excellent. Excellent.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
I see you later.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.